What's going on, my friends, my family, my fellow gamers? And we are live. What's going on, people? How's everybody doing? Happy Friday. Weekend starting and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Just finished getting off the stream with Zaire. And make sure everything is good. Let me do my little pop-out chat. Let's get this party started. You guys had to know what's coming. You guys had to know what's coming. Because this news is just too big for me not to say something. You know what I'm saying? It's just too big. So, but while we're doing our thing, the room is filling up little by little, it's filling up nicely. So, of course, let me look at the chat right now. Hold on. Sorry, I'm not looking at y'all guys. All right, let me address the chat. What's up? The greatest chat ever. We got here. All right, today's out here. Tamiko Dawes, Roman Knight. Joe Rails, all day is good. Merc 305, Samori Warfare, what's going on? Ken Van Lay, what's up? Texas Lean, Mike Hancho, Beats Games Life. What's going on, people? How's everybody enjoying their Fridays out there in the chat? DJ Almighty, what's going on, brother? Quanvo was good. Danny Stab, only the illest. You know what I'm saying? My man says it's fake news. Sony has to be 83. We're going to talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Devel Riney, what's going on? What's good? Who you go? We got Phaedrus Socrates, right? Where you go? Bring Harmony, Luke's Blade, Juan Badaraco, what's going on? All day. Hey, my man Stuart Stokes with the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. He says, quick review for Fist of North Star and how long? All right, I'll say that. Man, how long? I at least probably put in 15 hours, maybe more. It's kind of like a Masu type game, Dynasty Warriors. Primarily is one big city, but has a big open map that's mostly desert with little mini cities in it. A lot of side quests and side stories. A lot of opportunities to develop your skills. Ultimately, if you have to like the anime. I think that's what ties me in and I enjoyed the game because if you watch the anime, the original Fist of North Star, it kept to that feeling. It kept to Kenshiro's ability to fight, whoop people's ass. You're able to develop your skills. A lot of characters. I have many of the classic characters in there, just telling the story a little bit different. It's bugged out, So, it's a good title. I enjoyed it. I love the fighting part and stuff and the skills that you developed. It was a decent game. So I enjoyed it. All right. So that's my quick review on that one. All right. But I say you'll enjoy it better if you enjoy the anime. If you didn't enjoy the anime, I will say the things you probably will not. How would you say? There's certain things that annoyed me about the game, but I was willing to let it go simply because it was an enjoyable game based off, the source material. If you don't care about the source material, I think you'll critique it harsher, rightfully so. Some things that annoy me is slow to react when it comes to attack cancel and stuff like that. Sometimes the character's movement is a little bit quirky when fighting and stuff like that. Little small stuff like that. Sometimes the story and conversations, like the side quest in the game, gets drawn out. Like sometimes the conversations is too long and you just want to skip it. It starts, it gets long-winded, things like that, But if you like the source material, you enjoy the source material, I think you'll enjoy the game because it's tried and true to the source material, right? We got Berserker, what's going on? Here we go. We got Jilliam, Anime for Entertainment. Lionel Wogan, what's good, brother, man? Thank you for showing up. I'm glad you're here. Savage Jr., Dion, thank you so much. El Matador, what's going on, brother? My man, Lionel Wogan, my man out there with the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. He goes, yo, Porter Rock, make all my Spartan God a mod. That's homie. I think I already have him as a mod. Oh, no, I don't? All right. Here we go. All right. Since you want, here we go. I got you. Boom. You know what I'm saying? Boom. There you go. You know what I'm saying? Spartan God. There you go. Robert McLeod, Julian Molino. What's going on? Taste of Delight, man. Everything. Quanvo again. Everything. Andre 6K. My man's ready for 6K consoles. Petty Gamer. Clarissa. What's going on? Glad you're here. Vulcan Logic. What else? Reunion K. Xbox has no games. I thought Xbox. Oh man, only you know what I'm saying. Anyway, want to appreciate. Thank you so much. While everybody's out here, if you don't mind hitting the like button, I'll truly appreciate it. Get it out to all the social media platforms so we could kick it off. All right, and we could start talking about what we need to talk about. We already got over 100 people watching, so the room's filling up nicely. So let me do a quick recap so we could get into what we talk about, right? So, Phil Spencer, Sub Gamers, $2 super chat. Thank you so much. All right, Raja, what's going on? You like my last video? I appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. You know what I'm saying? My nigga got the blue yo. All right, everybody. All right, so you're ready. So we all know the main point, right? We all know. Hold on, let me set this up so I can look at y'all and set up the chat. So that way. Okay. I'll go back. No. All right. Okay. So we all know what's popping now, right? We all got the news. The big news is Sony announced they will not be at E3. They will not have a booth. Stuart Stokes, $2 super chat. He goes, "How was the story complete, or did they skip stuff?" So now I want to say they skip stuff in terms of story. They kind of change the story, so the game doesn't truly follow the anime. So it's kind of like an alternate story, you could say, but they kept a lot of the characters, how they act. They kept it true to the nature of characters. They just didn't go with the same story of the anime. It's his own unique story in a way. All right. Hope that answers the question. If you like the anime, you'll like this game. You'll enjoy it. All right. Okay. So we all know the news came out. Sony's not going to E3, all right? They're not going to be at E3. They're not even going to have booths or anything. They're not going to be that at all, all right? I'm going to tell you how I feel about that up front first. Before we get into the speculations on why or why I think it is what it is, the finest shout out, what's going on? Thank you for, rocking out with me, all right? Before I get into why I feel that my assumptions or whatever, I'm going to say how I feel about that, okay? The truth is there's really no damage controlling or coping to one thing. E3 is a big event. Can eventually become a less relevant event, especially with Sony dropping out. Maybe one day Microsoft might drop out. Yes, it could potentially lead to that point. But last year, right, we had big conversation on E3. E3 talk lasted the whole week. We were comparing who had the better conference and stuff like that. So in its state, it is still a big event. Is it the biggest event ever? That could be argued, but it is still a huge event. So to not see Sony is kind of disappointing in the sense that E3 was a unified place where we saw so many big press events. It's kind of like our Gamers Super Bowl. It was our Super Bowl event. It was a place where you had the halftime show and the best teams were there presenting this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Now we got one big team that decided to drop out, And my concern is how many more teams are willing to drop out. And this is not so much just a specific Sony thing. It's just a gaming thing of where we had the epicenter of E3. Sure, Sony could do their own shows. Nintendo could do their own shows. Microsoft could do their own shows. But for a while, E3 was like the big epicenter where everybody collided. And we had a whole week to ourselves of just straight up gaming, and the whole social media, everything was just taken over by E3. It was just one big spectacle. Does that make sense? It was like football, it was like Super Bowl week in its own right. Or it's kind of like the NBA All-Star weekend, where Friday, Saturday, it was just all stuff about the NBA, and then Sunday you got the big game. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of disappointing that Sony dropped out, more so of what's going to happen to our E3 if this continues. You know what I'm saying? Eventually, we won't have our Super Bowl week. We won't have our NBA All-Star weekend type thing for gamers. E3 was the epicenter with that. I hope the ESA Association finds a way to make E3 more enticing for everybody to show up and continue and stuff like that. Because there was a lot of great memories the E3 presentation showed across the spectrum of all platform providers, software developers, publishers, and the like, right? So We'll just leave it at that. So that's my personal thing. I am kind of disappointed. So now here's the big question: why did Sony do it? Right. So a lot of people have speculations on various degrees. Right. We're gonna talk about the fun one from the Xbox side, saying, "Oh, it's because Sony doesn't have shit. That's it. Prepare for the drought and stuff like that." All right. So let's address that point. Prepare for the drought. Sony doesn't have shit. Okay. The lack of E3, obviously, you are not going to get no new game announcements. And I'm going to hit a point on that one. We're not going to get any new game announcements, right? But that's not the same as having a drought, because we still have tons of content that we still are waiting for to play that we all already know about. We got The Last of Us 2, Days Gone, which does have a release date, Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima. That's 4 big AAAs, right? And 3 of them being in new IPs, And if those new IPs are successful in their quality, you're talking about new franchises that will lead into the PlayStation 5, right? Then you got other projects from companies that are making games exclusive for PlayStation, or possibly, worst case scenario, or not even worst case scenario, another case scenario that they're time exclusives. But we know that on PlayStation, like Judgment Eyes and stuff like that from Sega. There was another game, damn, I keep forgetting. But then there's another game I'm not going to forget is Lost Soul Aside. So you have those games that's up in there, that's fleshing out. I know a lot of people, every time I keep mentioning games, people be like, you keep forgetting about Dreams. I know a lot of people mention Dreams. I'm not really interested in that game. That's the reason why I don't really mention it enough. So I haven't really been tracking it. I don't really like those type of games, So that's why I really don't like that, right? So Delighted says, did you read the official response? So yes, I did, but it's very generic, because if you read their response, they're talking about they're looking for ways to engage with the consumers. It's a very generic response. You know what I'm saying? And there's certain things, and as I talk through, there's certain things I feel that obviously Sony can't admit publicly. And if you stick with me, you'll see what I'm talking about, right? So obviously they're gonna give we're gonna find ways to engage and do all this stuff. They didn't say, we're gonna host PSX 2019 April, whatever. They were very generic. But this is where stuff like that. Well, people talking about new content, new stuff, whatever, right? So that's one angle. Another angle, people are talking about, Sony's gonna host their own event in 2019 where they're gonna reveal the PlayStation 5, and they feel it's a better venue than the E3 venue. That's some opinions that people are hosting on that one. Some people feel that Sony can make more money in this event, vice the E3 event, which again, it takes me back to, it's kind of sad, because I get if Sony could make more money doing their own thing and have the spotlight, all to themselves. I get that, but at the same time, again, the E3 week was our week, and one major player dropped out. Stuart Stokes, $2 super chat. Thank you so much, brother. He said, I was trying to hold the line, but Xbox got the second win. He said, it's all good, brother. You know what I'm saying? It's like boxing. You're gonna get punched in the face. Draft Dark was going on. Thank you for rocking out, Outlaw. You know what I'm saying? Geico was going on. Glad everybody's here. So then there's that aspect of the E3. Now I'm gonna tell you my aspect, and a lot of you may not like my perspective. All right, Garuda Legends, $10 super chat. When you coming back to American side, my Rican family? I am just glad the Europeans are showing you love. Do a vlog once in a while, my Rican big bro. Appreciate. Thank you so much for the super chat. I was thinking about that because there's a lot of exciting stuff I've been going through in Europe. So I'll talk about that later. But I was thinking about that, doing a vlog and stuff like that. Europe's pretty exciting. All right, so back. So now this is where you guys might not like what I have to say. You may not like my perspective. All right, but again, I'm gonna have to keep it real, okay? To paint the picture so you guys can understand, we have to look at a couple of shows from Sony, from Microsoft, from other developers, right? Let's take it back to PlayStation PSX 2017. All right, it was trash, right? Of course, I'm being hard on it. Some people say, well, it just wasn't good. It wasn't trash because we got a little bit. Let me put it this way. It didn't do Sony any real favors at a minimum. Best case scenario, it was blah. Worst case scenario, it was trash, and then whatever in between, right? So you have that. Then you have EA's E3, where people saw it was pretty much an irrelevant event because they just showed the same games that was on the Microsoft stage and whatever. Like, why have your own unique event when those same games are going to be on Microsoft, Sony stage or whatever? It doesn't make sense, right? So that didn't help EA in any case. Then you have BlizzCon with the announcement of Diablo Mobile. They got thrashed. The YouTube video got thrashed. Everything. It definitely did no favors for Blizzard, right? And then we just saw XO18. Let's put it this way. You know, everybody, again, I thought it was trash. Some people thought it was good. Let's be honest. Overall, XO18 didn't do Microsoft any favors either. So you see consistent shows where if you don't push the right information, the information people expect, it doesn't really matter if somebody says, well, Sony tweeted out it's not going to be this. Microsoft tweeted out it's not going to be that. Blizzard said they never promised this. It doesn't matter. It's an event. The event has a window. It's pre-programmed. You know, you were pushing it out. People are actually taking their time out of their day to visit the event or to sit down in their homes or get on their phone to watch it. There's an expectation of new games because in the end, that's what we want. We want to see new games because we already know about the old games. We know about the current games. What new products are we going to see in the future? All right. So now, how does this tie to Sony E3? I'm going to say this. I don't think Sony has any new games for the PlayStation 4. I think Ghost of Tsushima is the last new IP in their development process that they had. Everything else, somewhere, at some point from developers that already released games on the PlayStation 4, they already went to the PlayStation 5. Any new game that Sony does have is a PlayStation 5 game. They don't have no more PlayStation 4 games. The only games that they have for PlayStation 4 are the ones we already know about. Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us, Days Gone, Death Stranding. That's it. And then obviously, you know, Lost Soul Aside, indies, VR games that we know about, Dreams, things like that. Maybe some remasters, and then whatever third party. Third party, they do what they want, right? With Sega games, stuff like that. So all that's already in play. So now, if Sony doesn't have anything new other than the PlayStation 5, right? In order to announce the PlayStation 5 games, they have to be ready to unveil the console. If they're not going to unveil the console, then they're not going to talk about the PlayStation 5 games. So let's say, because E3, they're not going to it, it's clear E3 is not the venue they want to announce PlayStation 5. So if that's not the venue they want to announce PlayStation 5, what do they talk about at PlayStation 5? What are they going to talk about? Multiplats? That's not going to react well because a lot of people are going to say, those are games I could play on my Xbox. Those are games I could play on my PC. What are their exclusives, Sony? Okay, fine. We'll show you exclusives. What exclusives they're going to show when all the new games are PlayStation 5? They're not going to show The Last of Us again because, again, remember, we already had an in-depth E3 coverage of The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding. Days Gone is going to be released before E3. It's released in April. So what are they going to talk about? The smaller indies? They can't go back to that because people already have an expectation of Sony big blockbuster new titles. Yeah, you could show indies, but along with, you know, indies and multiplats are kind of like the undercard of a major fight. You know, you get a pay-per-view event and you want to watch a big fight, you're going to get your undercards. That's fine. Indies, multiplats are your undercard. Then you get to the main fight, right? Well, they don't have a main fight unless we're talking about the PlayStation 5. But again, that's incumbent on announcing the PlayStation 5. And I think that's where Sony's at. Sony's at the point that if they're going to provide new IPs and announce new IPs and show trailers of new IPs, they're PlayStation 5 IPs, you know? And it has to be tied in on when they're ready to announce a console, right? So the question is this. Do they announce? They're not going to announce. This is one thing we already know. So, well, let's formulate two things we already know. Number one, they're not announcing the PS5 at E3 because they're not even at E3. So we know that. We're not going to get no announcement for that. Number two, it doesn't make sense if you don't have new PlayStation 4 games. It doesn't make sense to be at E3 because, again, what are you going to talk about? So they're not going to talk about PlayStation 5, and they don't have new IPs being cooked up in the PlayStation 4. Guru Legends, thank you so much for the super chat. He says PS4 has pure Fire games next year, and PS5 might have pushed back Firestorm games and some new shit. PlayStation 4 has a lot of great games, all right? But we're not going to have an E3. Remember, I said this before. You can't waste people's time. Sony's not going to have an E3 with another in-depth coverage of the same games we had last E3. Everybody's going to bash it. And, even the PlayStation fanboys and the most hardcore fanboys, even JTech TV, would have a very tough time damage controlling that. We cannot have another E3 with Death Stranding, The Last of Us, and Ghost of Tsushima. We just can't, So the way I see 2019 panning out is one of two things going to happen. Sony's going to have their own event to unveil the PlayStation 5. If they don't have an event unveiling the PlayStation 5, then what they're going to do is just little tiny, I don't want to say events, but like Twitter and YouTube stuff, right? Where it leads up to the release of a big major game. Kind of like what God of War. When they announced God of War was coming out in April, March or February, Game Informer had coverage on it on the YouTube channel, and their gaming magazine was released. And then you had like little podcasts with Cory Barlog, 100 rapid fire questions of God of War. Things like that. Not big events, not something where people take the time, just a quick 5-minute videos and stuff like that with IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer, big magazine blowout, little podcasts here and there, Twitters, trailers, release new trailers every other week, talk about, 10-minute videos from the PlayStation YouTube video talking about the game. I think that's what they're going to do with each and every major game. With Days Gone, with The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, it's just going to keep leading on. And that's how they'll have 2019 with those 4 major games. And in between, you got your Lost Soul Aside, Dreams, Judgment Eyes from Sega, and whoever else they have out there. And then, of course, you have the multiplats in between and whatever deal Sony is able to cook up. That's what I think is how Sony's going to have 2019 if they don't announce a PlayStation 5 and an unannounced event. 2019 will pretty much send PlayStation 4 on a bang. 2020 comes out, Sony announces either their own event or they announce, hey, we're back at E3 and we're ready to have a big surprise. Either way, you know what that big surprise is. It's going to be the PlayStation 5 unveiling, and they're going to show the new games, which is PlayStation 5 games. You know what I'm saying? So that's where it's going to plan out. I will say one thing. I don't think Sony has new games for PlayStation 4. So if they do have an event, let's say if Sony decides, hey, we're going to have a PSX event, but we're going to have it in May, or we're going to have it in, April, if they're going to have it in July or August or something, right? If they're going to have their own event outside of E3 and they say, hey, get ready for this event, I have a feeling it's the PlayStation 5 event, because I don't think they're going to announce new PlayStation 4 games in 2018 or 2019. I don't think they're going to do that. The games are PlayStation 5 focus. Any big event that Sony's going to host is going to be that. It makes sense because they weren't at Gamescom. Because again, what are they going to show on Gamescom? They didn't host a PSX 2018 this year. Because again, what are you going to show at PSX? I don't think they have new PlayStation 4 games. They just don't have it. They didn't make it. They moved on to the PlayStation 5 as a first party. Multiplats, obviously third-party developers, they're always going to have Madden. You're always going to have 2K. Third party clearly will have cross-gen titles. Stuff like that, or PlayStation 5 will natively be backwards compatible with the PlayStation 4, so you'll be able to play PlayStation 4 games on your PlayStation 5. I see that obviously being a thing, but we have to look at that perspective. We can't have a show. Nobody can have a show with nothing meaningful. All right, and definitely Sony's not in the position to repeat E3 2018. Hell, some people didn't like Sony's E3 in the first place. And that was the first time they had in-depth coverage of these games. That was the first time. And some people didn't like it. Imagine if they repeated it again. Even I appreciate it. I didn't think Sony's E3 was the best or whatever, but I thought it was good. But the thing I liked about Sony's E3 was I got some good in-depth coverage right over. But I'm not going to tolerate that again. I don't want to see more in-depth coverage because at this point, you're spoiling the game now. There's only so much in-depth coverage on these titles you can do. So it's all about the PlayStation 5. So when are they going to announce it? That's the big key. Are they announcing 2019? If they are, it's going to be their own event. Now, this past month, I even made a video. Sony hosted their DEF CON. Now, this is a theory. This is just an interesting theory, all right? And again, this may not be something people may want to hear. So Sony had a private PlayStation DEF CON, developer convention in London, I think it was, right? I made a video about it or whatever. It didn't show the date, but it was this month. Rumor has it already happened, right? So Sony had a DEF CON. What DEF CON is a special, NDA, non-disclosure agreement, very tight-lipped, tight-sealed event where they revealed the PlayStation 5 to the developers, and it's NDA. Everybody signs contract. No one could talk about it, but this is their opportunity and their first look to show the product to third-party developers. Sony and Microsoft are very big on showing their stuff to third-party developers because they want them to help them shape the console for the next generation, platforms, right? So DevCon already passed. Obviously, we don't hear anything about it because it's all under wraps. It's definitely not something the public can, for public talking about, right? What if, and this is just a theory, what if DevCon didn't go as well as Sony hoped to? What if the console they presented to developers, third-party developers, Ubisoft, EA, whoever was invited, they recommended some major changes? And because of this major changes, Sony now has to be like, okay, maybe the original plan was, hey, we're going to be at E3, unveil the PlayStation 5 until they show these systems to the developers. And the developers are like, nah, this ain't it, Sony. You need to do this, give us more RAM, do this for the GPU, whatever they recommend. And now Sony has to be like, okay, we're going to need more time. This is not ready for E3. And then they just scratch E3. And of course, they do the PR sprint. We're looking for a great venue, great opportunity to engage with the consumers, with our fan base. So stay tuned. When in reality, DevCon didn't go so well. And they have to adjust and modify and put in the recommended changes developers want. I'm just saying a theory, right? I'm not saying that's what happened, but it's bizarre they're not at E3. And again, so many people have different ways to look at this. Some people say it's not financially viable, which, okay, I mean, it is what it is. But there's a few things we do have to accept. Number one, I think it's safe to say there are no new big AAA games, no new AAA developed games for PlayStation 4. I think it's safe to say Sony moved on. And I'm going to explain one more reason why I feel that way. We all know sparse was if there was one thing besides crossplay, I would say the biggest negative hit PlayStation got this gen. People could talk about the Pro, saying that how it's weaker, only does a little bit more, but they only launched it for $400 and it was in 2016. So, of course, a weaker console is not going to be as good as the more powerful console, right? Crossplay was a thing that sustained itself and it blew up when Switch got Fortnite. So that kind of blew up. But I think that really got Sony's radar, that really resonated with them, but not in a good way, in a bad way, was sparse. When they made that statement that their first party lineup is kind of sparse, I don't think they realized how big that narrative was going to be pushed. It was a huge narrative. Sparse, that was huge. Everybody, that spread across the gaming industry, everybody knew it, all right? They were honest about it. They were very honest about that they need to improve the first party lineup. And I think within their honesty, they didn't realize how it was going to be used against them. Because that's it takes a little courage. Not courage, but to know your fault and publicly talk about it is rare for a company to do that. Usually companies will just spin, spin, spin. But they went out, they'd be like, hey, wait a minute, man. Our first party lineup output is kind of sparse. And they didn't realize that word will have a life of its own. And it was a negative impact on PlayStation. It was used consistently year after year because I think they said the sparse thing in late 2014, early 2015, and that statement was being used all the way up to like 2016 or whatever. Even when we were getting games, they were still using the word sparse was still being used, right? So that word was very, I don't want to say damaging, but I'm pretty sure Sony took notice on that word. It took a life of its own. It would be crazy to say people on Twitter at Sony Corporation they have no idea that sparse was. They know. They saw it. It was trending. They know. So to ensure PlayStation 5 doesn't go through that, I have a feeling that they balanced out when to cut the umbilical cord for PlayStation 4 and now take studios that are open, ready for development, and be like, no, you're not going to make another PlayStation 4 game. Start heading out for PlayStation 5. So we can start pumping out your new IPs, within the first 2 years, within the first year or so, instead of waiting 3-4 years, So like Guerrilla launched Horizon Zero Dawn in 2017, right? It was February. So the last 2 months, couple of months is polished. The main team can now move on and start a big project while the remaining guys can clean up, whatever. So you figure late 2016, right? They already have the Decima engine, so they don't have to worry about putting in time for that. If they were to pump out a game in 4 to 5 years, and they started in 2016, you're talking about 2020, 2021 window for Guerrilla's Naked Pix IP. Uncharted, Naughty Dog has 2 major teams. One team is working on The Last of Us. The other team was working on Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4 launched early 2016. So that team could have started their project in early 2016, maybe late 2015, while Uncharted 4 is getting through its polish. So they could be working on the next PlayStation 5 game, which might be a new IP. Again, from 2016, 4 to 5 years, you're talking, you know what I'm saying? Since 2016, you're talking about 2020, 2021 window, 2022, right? You see what I'm saying? Oh, so that way PlayStation 5 don't start out the gate with sparse. I think they're trying to make sure. That's just a theory again. They don't want that to happen, It's an interesting dynamic, Overall, though, one thing we should all be concerned about is one, E3 as a whole. This is I don't want to say a huge blow, but it's a significant blow because this is a major player, right? And if Sony doesn't ever come back, right, and they host their own events, and these events are successful, other companies will follow suit. I mean, other companies, Nintendo kind of did it, but if Sony pulls out and they're able to save money, I'm not saying I'm advocating for that. What I'm saying, the reality is, if they end up saving money or even make money on this, other industries will do that. Other publishers will do that. Activision could be like, man, screw this. We're not gonna show Call of Duty at this event. We could do our own event. We could have, instead of BlizzCon, have fucking Call of Duty Con or whatever. Ubisoft could end up doing their own event. We go to America all the way out there for this, man. We could have our own shit. And little by little, it's like a domino effect. Everything just keeps crumbling down, ultimately making E3 irrelevant, and then we just don't have it no more. So that's a concern for all of us as gamers with Sony dropping out. Okay. Number 2, huge pressure on Microsoft. Nintendo does their Treehouse live stream things, but as far as the big stage where you see people on a stage and the crowd all around it, whatever, the biggest one by far is going to be Microsoft now, bigger than EA, bigger than everybody. And they're going to have a lot of pressure because now all eyes on them. As far as conversation with Sony, people are just going to pretty much just say, man, just remember the days when Sony was here, kind of miss them, wish they were here. And that's pretty much all the conversation is going to be. So E3 is going to be very heavily focused on Microsoft. And I hope Microsoft bigs the big guns or whatever. Hopefully they have Fable ready, more Gears of War, stuff like that, actual gameplay, multiplayer, stuff like that. Cuphead 2, something, but pressure's going to be on Microsoft. Because since it's all so focused on them, obviously, you're still going to have your Ubisoft and other shows, Square Enix, if they even bother, whatever. But Microsoft having this big lens on them that their show could easily be one of the best shows, period, or they could get thrashed. You know what I'm saying? And they're just going to have to, it's going to be something. Taco, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. He says, will Sony lose third-party partners to MS at E3? No. I will say Microsoft will have more of a monopoly of third-party showing games on their stage. But again, you only have so much time for the event, maybe up to 2 hours at the most. But as far as Sony losing third-party, like in general, maybe that's an aspect of your question. At the end of the day, it comes down to how many consoles are sold and how much money you make. PlayStation 4 is 86 million. Xbox, not even at 40. So third parties go where the money is. They always have. They always will. Because at the end of the day, even though they try to make it sound like it, they really don't care about the consoles other than making sure they can make the games that they want to make. But other than that, they really don't care about. They're not too hard on about the success or who has more success than the other. As long as both console sells and the games are on those consoles and PC, that's all third party cares for, So we'll see that. But so yeah, that's how I feel ultimately. Is Nintendo Switch 9th gen? Interesting question. If you feel it's a console, then yes, it's a 9th gen console. I feel it's a handheld that you could just connect to your TV. I don't see it as a console. I know some people call it a hybrid. The term doesn't mean anything to me. Hybrid, I don't know. I never really, maybe I'll research and do much depth. But to me, the Switch is just something that you could just connect to your TV, It's kind of like, the example I gave was a laptop that you slide into a docking station, and the docking station has, the keyboard connected to it, a mouse, a monitor. Well, when you take a laptop and you dock it into the docking station, it's not a desktop. It's a laptop just docked into a docking station. After that, you pull it out, it's a laptop. It's not going to change, That's what I see the Switch is. Switch is a handheld, and then you just put it in a docking station so that way it interfaces with the TV. But it's still a handheld. It's still a handheld. It just interfaces with the TV, But it depends on how you guys see it. If you guys see it as a hybrid, it could very well be a 9th gen console. You know what I'm saying? Because if you consider a console, the 8th gen console was the Wii U. You're not going to have two totally different consoles under the same gen, So, but neither here nor there with the topic and all. But thank you so much for the question. But that's it. Again, kind of disappointed with Sony's decision on so many levels, not just for the company itself, but for the E3 event. That's our Super Bowl week, and I enjoyed it. I used to take off so I could do stream with you guys. Those days that I streamed with you guys, I took off. Especially here, where those events are like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I definitely have to take off the next day at work because I can't go to work like at 6 in the morning when, I'm doing a live stream or whatever, So makes me nervous about the future of E3. And then also the whole, what is Sony trying to do? What is Sony planning and how they're going to execute it, how they're going to unveil it, how they're going to give us this information on their future. And obviously the future is the PlayStation 5, That's it. But as far as PlayStation 4, the year is going to cap out with 2019. We got some amazing games. Again, what I'm looking for, obviously, I'm looking forward to Days Gone, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, The Last of Us. But one game, and some of you may already know, I am so looking forward to playing Lost Soul Aside. If you have not checked that out, go to YouTube, type in Lost Soul Aside. It has the graphics of, like Final Fantasy 15, beautiful graphics, but the gameplay of like Bayonetta, Devil May Cry type game. It looks fantastic. Supposedly it has a little bit of RPG elements, but it looks phenomenal. And I'm just I'm so looking forward to playing that game, And then maybe hopefully for Christmas I'll get a PlayStation VR because there's some games that I would like to play on VR. I have Resident Evil 7 on disc, right? Bought it day one, but never played it yet because I want to play it on VR because I heard the immersion is so crazy and some people saying that I won't even be able to finish. Nah, challenge accepted. Hell, I might even stream it if I could. But anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say. I thank you so much for you guys rocking out with me. If you don't mind, before you dip out, hit the like button and retweet it out to your social media platforms. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Hit me up in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Check out the description box. If you're new to the channel, you'll see the link to my Twitter. Hit me up there for the follow, and we could continue a conversation there if you choose to. And again, also, before you dip out and you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. I would truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I hope you guys have a good night and stuff like that. I'm about to do some late night gaming. It's 1:38 in the morning. But before I go to bed, I got to get some game on. But before I go, my man Lionel's out there. He's like, nah, Puerto Rock, you got to answer these questions. You got to answer up. He says, what Sony is doing is a big gamble. Past 2 years, Sony's been spreading their self too thin with hosting 3 events a year instead of one big one, which would have been smarter. That's a good point. It is a big gamble, and I think the gamble is going to be reliant on PlayStation 5. That is what they're going for. That's what they're doing. That's what the future is. We all know the future. Everybody's wondering, oh, what's the future of Sony? The future of Sony is PlayStation 5. PlayStation 4, we got what we got. Death Stranding, I said the games 100 times already on this thing. We got, in between games, double A's, double A's and single A's. We got indies and we got multiplats. All right. That's PlayStation 5. PlayStation 4. The future of PlayStation is PlayStation 5. And Sony will announce it when they're ready to announce the console. And when they do announce the console, they'll announce the games. They'll announce the exclusives. And of course, they'll announce the third parties that's working with the platform as well. And that'll be it, But it's a big gamble. And just like Antonio said, PS5 is a great gamble. So with that said, PlayStation gamers, Nintendo gamers, Xbox gamers, PC gamers, phone gamers, all you gamers out there, enjoy your weekend. It's Friday. Get out there, have fun, enjoy your gaming, or get out of your house, do what you got to do. But either way, this is Porter Rock 77, your only friend in these YouTube streets, setting it straight. Ignore all the bullshit you hear out there on Twitter. Professor Porter Rock gave you what you needed, all right? Anyway, you guys take care. I'm out. Peace.